Well, everything checks out on this. It's got one arm that has a tiny bit of play, but not much. Okay. Yep. Okay, wait, we gotta activate it. We gotta say, that's not going anywhere. Now the magic kicks in. Okay, adventure complete. It's home. It's not entirely assembled, but that's okay. I haven't really talked about this much at all. I decided after the craziness of last year, well, I knew I wanted a rotary rake for a while, but, you know, affording one and finding a decent used one was not an easy feat. So we just got awarded a micro grant from the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, which I'm grateful for. They're in a really great program, which then allowed me to jump on this, which was up in Springfield, Vermont. I had watched it for the last couple months on both Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, but was waiting to see if I could get the grant to fund it. And I did, and it was still there, and I went up and saw it, and it's in remarkably good shape, and went for it. Need to work on fixing the hydraulic cylinder that lifts it up and down. That's got a small leak. That's totally something I can handle. I need to replace one of the hoses that actually sprung a leak today as we were loading it. But that's fine. That's, for the scheme of things, is totally okay. And everything else seems to be pretty nice and tight. And this model actually has removable arms, which is a big deal for ease of transport. I would not have been able to just throw this thing on a trailer if the arms didn't come off halfway along it. So I've still got more I have to put back on. And this thing is a left-hand delivery model, which you don't see a lot, especially of the Kuhn rotary rakes like this. Most of them go off to the right for reasons I can't quite figure out, other than, I guess, I don't know, farmers like looking over their right shoulder because that's what everything else is. But my other rake goes off to the left. Delivering to the left means you get to rake clockwise, which is the same direction that I bale. So, yeah, it all just really, really lined up. And here we are, another project to work on. Well, first time engaging it on my tractor, and it seems nice and smooth, no arms on it. But part of that is because I have the hydraulic line off, so I can't raise it. And it's a bit too low and scraping the ground. So just trying here and there. I ran this thing, you know, before I bought it, and it sounded good. But it's nice just to have everything sound nice and quiet, even when I'm back home. Well, I was a little worried about this. This tractor has had an issue with the tedder, which has the same PTO. This one's longer. Of something weird down in the PTO when you're on an angle. And sure enough, it's doing it with this. I'll show you. Start to increase the angle. There it goes. Not like that sound. Okay, well, I'm going to try it on the 275, but I can't figure out why the axle has play in it. As you can see, it is pointed off to my right, it's left. And I noticed as I drove with it, turning, it would kind of steer and follow by 5 degrees maybe. And doesn't look like any of these bolts are loose. It looks like the play is up internal a little bit, which is not what I wanted to see. So hopefully this is not going to turn into an onion project here. Oh dear. I don't know if it translates to video, but you can see that turning a little bit relative to it. And it's a twist all the way up inside, not from those bolts. Well, that's not nothing hydraulic leak wise. So that's telling. Where's it coming from? Yeah, it's definitely one of the seals. All right. Well, that's going to be on the docket before too long here. But I knew about that. The guy I bought it from mentioned that first thing. So he was hopeful it was just a little bit. But I just went up and down with it a few times. And it definitely shoots it out at the top. So it's okay. It'll be an expense. Okay, top of the list of things I don't like. It's raised in the air. That is play that should not be there. I don't know if it's as simple as tightening piece up top, but that's not what we want to see. Oh, Esco does it again. That's off of there. There's everything off, and there's the keyway that didn't show up in the parts diagram. But there is a key in it. It's just down a little further. So I don't know if there's just some wear where the keys are or what. You know, we still have this little bit of play, but you can see it directly in twist in that. And it at least tells me there's enough locking it going straight forward, rather than just having the nut be tight. So not today, but when we get a new nut, get that nice and tightened down, maybe use some washers as spacers just to mess around with it and see if really getting that nice and snug and tight against this casting, which again is not egged out, so I'm really happy to see that. See if getting that nice and tight will stop the wobble of all of this when it's lifted up. I don't know. It might not be that simple, but I feel more optimistic now than I did this morning. Okay, I had a minute. This old nut tightened all the way back down, and it's lifted up, and this is where there was play before. There is nothing now. It is nice and tight. Oh ho ho. Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay, in the final test, everything sounds great. So the gears and everything are meshing nicely. When we made it tighter, that hydraulic line is not supposed to be down that low. I'm being real careful about that. That'll be threaded back up through the middle of that whole nut assembly. But this is a big win today. Okay. So before I get too much farther, I'm playing with adjustment on all these tines. And I knew from before that this arm, despite having the newest paint, has a little bit of a bend in it. And as this rake goes, these arms pivot 90 degrees. When they're in the back, they're sort of parallel with the ground. And then when they come down around to grab the hay, they swing down. And that's why this gearbox is so complex, because there's rollers in there that follow a track. So what I've been trying to do is figure out which 10 of the tine arms come the closest to the right adjustment on that. And ironically, it's the one with the worst paint. So that's easy to remember, although I'm about to mark them with a Sharpie. All of the other ones, I'd say, are about 2 inches of clearance here. And then this one just barely drags on the ground. All the other ones were hitting when they were on that arm. So yeah, I mean, just trying to see what I can make work, what I've got to take off, try to bend, try to straighten out. As I said, I'd love not to cut tines, but I will if it comes down to it. Because this rake has seen some love and use. But yeah, that one, the clearance looks pretty good. Yeah, some of these are different. So this particular tine was a little too high on everything, but it matches that one nice. So number 8 you are, that's number 1. Getting there. Okay, so it's not written in stone, but I've got pretty nice matches for all of them. Getting a little bit more drag on that side of the rake, but this driveway is not perfectly level either. So we'll see. It's possible things are slightly off kilter with it leaning more to the left. I can always mess around with inflating these tires more. I don't know. But anyway, I'm getting it pretty close. This is the one that I got to try to get off and bend. And I know it's a dual roll pin here. Okay, before I take this thing off, just confirming my theory that the bend, indeed, when there's an arm on it and it's getting an operating position here, that bend does put that arm down, which would amplify the farther out you get and should cause that dragging. So let's see if I can get this thing to straighten out. Well, I took it off, I heated it up, I pounded it with a hammer. You can see where I heated it, and where I pounded it. I didn't seem to change the shape much, but I swear we have just a little bit better clearance on this set of tines. So I might have just nudged it slightly enough And they're all dragging on that side still, which, you know, tells me this, God, there's enough room for error here. This thing could be slightly cockeyed. But anyway, boy, that might be good enough for now. I don't know if I'm going to call that solved, but it doesn't sound much worse than the other ones. Well, making sure the tires were topped up helped also. And the one other thing I'm doing, because these removable tine arms take a lot of wear, and I'm going to have to fabricate or shore these up eventually. But for right now, putting these double, I need to get more of them, these double washers in there helps to take up some of the slack and some of the wear and tear on the arms, because there's a lot of worn out metal there. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. That's not too bad. That is not too bad. Cool. Boy, it is nice and quiet though. Any little bit of like tinking you're hearing there is the fact that there's a little bit of slop where the back half of the rake arms meet the front half, as well as tines just, you know, flapping around a little bit, still hitting the ground over in that corner just a smidge. All right, that seems to be pretty smooth to me. Well, I can see the underside of the rake a little better now. Well, some scraping, some gunk, some rags. It's not pristine, but I can at least see what's going on a little better. It's all just grease, but old grease at that. Well, it's April 7th, and we're back at it after about 5 inches of snow we got 3 days ago, I think. It's melting. It's getting close to 50 degrees today. It's supposed to be in the 60s the next couple days, but had things on hold yet again. So, sort of crudely, I got this really heavy-duty waterproof Gorilla tape to try and just get the tarp for the rake in a little bit better shape. Yeah, I'm not going to dump a lot of money into this until I know for certain the rake's working well, but that at least gets it a little better. So, what I'm really working on now, while I wait for the kit for the hydraulic cylinder to come in, is by far the most tweaked part of this rake is the sort of protective frame and the part that holds the tarp. Previous owner clearly hit something, bent it. I knew that going into it. Maybe I was being a little bit overly optimistic in what I could scrape together to make that work, but we'll see. What the previous folks had done is had this big bolt, really big bolt, shoved in this hole here and had this arm riding at a much higher spot. And I don't know how much of that was to get more clearance between the arms and the frame here, which there's not a lot there, but also just how much the arm that holds the tarp is sagging. So I want to see if I can get this de-slopped a bit and get that riding higher. I'd really want to avoid taking this off and heating it and bending it and doing more things that might weaken it more. But I'm going to try to see if there's something else I can do here, maybe to get it to stop a little higher, split the difference. Again, just try to make this thing functional and make sure the important parts of the rake work before I go and dump money into things like that. But so we're getting there, but working around the snow. Well, I know it's crude, but that just might be the ticket. It buys me about an inch. There's my Gorilla Tape patchwork. It could be better. Certainly could be worse. But look at this. We're getting a lot closer. That might even be a pretty good height because you don't want it dragging, and the stubble's going to have some height to it. So we'll see. Got to tighten things up a little, but I think we're getting closer. Well, call this crude and TBD effective, but I've spaced this thing out quite a bit. Yeah, this might be a weak point. This might break. I'm really not sure. But at least having the tarp traveling more parallel with the rake rather than sticking out, I mean, this amplifies to be almost a foot farther in, honestly, compared to where it was if it was following this angle, because that's tweaked. So, is what it is. I think I like where the height is, and the angle's a lot better. So we'll see. Okay, well, here's another step in the rake project. I'm borrowing this PTO briefly from the Boydens, who are the remaining full-scale dairy in town. They have a Kuhn rake very similar to this. It's a right-hand delivery. I don't know what model it is. But what I want to do is see if the double U-joint on the tractor end makes the 165 much happier and maybe even able to run this rake. If so, I will consider shelling out the money for a new PTO that actually matches it with a full W joint. I wasn't looking forward to doing that kind of expense, but allowing both main tractors to run the rake feels worthwhile if this does the trick. So let's see. Well, I just tried it on the 275, which was not the real test. Did totally fine, but no matter how much I tighten that top nut, you can see how the axle gets out of kilter. That's about straight. So it really never seems to go any farther than that. And I did see the keys and the keyways in there when I took that nut off. So something's just a little loose. I'm gonna have to think whether I want to try tearing this thing apart. I really don't want to. I want to make sure this thing actually works first. So we'll see. Eureka! Hey, it's working. No bad sounds at all. Nice. Well, I jacked up both sides. There was definitely more play when it was jacked up. Got the snap ring off and managed to slide off the axle piece really easily. Nothing looked overly worn or egged out. It's just a difference in diameter size, so I guess it wore evenly. But I did manage to get a bushing in the middle there, as well as one on this side. That's all I could get and get the snap ring back on. So I don't know how much that really helped, but it's something. Well, just thought I would drive this thing out and try to get it field adjusted, even though there's no hay down, obviously. Far from it. But it helps to get a read back on where stubble would be-ish, how high this tarp ought to be. Still going to take trial and error come haying season, but I'll run it a little and see how it does.
Well, I'm not making anything, but it sounds pretty good. Maybe I'm breaking a tiny bit.
Gotta be careful of that outside shield, though. It's sticking out a lot farther than I'm used to on a rake. Okay, well, that was a successful test. So the repair kit for the cylinder came in. Got the cylinder off. I'll send that down to the mechanic I use for a lot of stuff, which is great. One of these days I need to learn how to pull apart a cylinder and fix it. This is not that year. It's okay. Yeah, so I'll just park this thing, and I think once that's fixed, this thing will be a cautious field ready. It's funny, there's only space to put 8 of the arms, and I think what they're expecting is that you're going to leave 2 of them tucked forward here, but without the lift cylinder, I didn't want them on there. So I figured out a way to get them all there. The thing that's even more funny, though, is the fact that all the tines point forward with the way these slots work. I really wish they would take up some of this real estate and point backwards and not be trying to skewer me while I'm taking the thing off, but I guess beggars can't be canyons, right?